All right. So, gives us great pleasure to introduce Alan. Alan's a Many Hats Club mainstay, popular figure, security researcher, Irishman with a fantastic hirsute thing going on facially and on top of his head. He's here to talk about open source intelligence and all that kind of stuff. So, Alan, over to you, mate. Good luck.
Thank you for the little introduction there, Mike. So, as Mike said, I'm Alan. My talk today is about my journey into OSINT and InfoSec in general. It's a bit of a traditional journey, but it's one that I feel I'd like to talk about. So, first of all, who am I? My handle is AlanTheBlank. There's my face to go with it. Uh, as you'll learn later on in the talk, my name's Alan O'Reilly, and I'm a student at TU Dublin Blanchardstown. I'm also a member of the Many Hats Club OLSEN Team, who last week won their third uh, Trace Labs CTF. So, what are the objectives of this talk? What will you walk away knowing from this talk? Well, you'll learn a bit about my journey into college, my journey into OSINT, and I'm also going to give a little bit of a beginner's guide into OSINT because I feel there's kind of that step missing in industry. How do you start doing this, and what's the easiest, what's the best tips you could give for beginners? But first of all, how did I get here? How did I start into InfoSec? Well, surprisingly, cybersecurity wasn't my first choice when it comes to college. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, in Ireland, we use what's known as the CAO, or Central Applications Office. And what that does, it's a non-profit organization who handles college applications. And they're coming under a lot of scrutiny right now with the uncertainty of the Leaving Cert examinations, which determine the points you get for going into college. Um, with the uncertainty of the Leaving Cert, it's doing a whole number on the Leaving Cert students, and there's a lot of questions being asked as to how they will be protected, and are they going to struggle trying to get into college now? But to go back to my first point, cybersecurity wasn't my first choice when it came to the CAO. Right? For those unfamiliar with it, you list your college preferences from 1 to 10. And my first option was actually computer applications in DCU. And second was computer science and software engineering at Maynooth University. In fact, the course that I'm in, when I originally filled out the CAO, was my 10th choice. It was not my first choice whatsoever, nor was it my second. It was all the way down at the bottom of the list, and that was digital forensics and cybersecurity at ITB. Now, thankfully, I did change that in the change of mind for the CAO and bumped that up into third. But that just goes to show, if you're an Irish student looking at this and you're worried that you're not going to get what you want, sometimes what you get is what you actually want. Because I probably would have dropped out of those first two courses. Like how I kind of wanted to drop out of the course that I got into at the start. Because it wasn't what I expected whatsoever. I got dropped into a general first 2 years, and they were the most boring 2 years of my life. It was not what I asked for at all. I joined the course to do cybersecurity, not to learn how to use Java for the 10th time. And I was that way until I got to clubs and societies sign up day in the college. And I recall it like it was yesterday, right? We were all herded into a hall, and societies had set up their tables, and there was this big crowd around the table. And when I went over to examine why, they had handcuffs on the table. And now, if you got too close, you'd end up handcuffed to the table and thrown a lockpick. And that was the best feeling ever when you had to pick the lock. And that was a society called HackerSock, who I have been a part of since then, and it's really helped me stay into college. So that's how I got into college. Then years have passed. I've made friends online, joined the Many Hats Club, and then one day stuff started to get real. So I received DM from a person that a suspicious message had been posted on a Discord server. I won't go into details for sake of privacy, but me and a group of people, we then gathered information on it, on the server that they posted, and that information was then relayed to the authorities. Then, about 2 weeks after the fact, we got a report from someone else, unrelated, that a kid had been arrested in the state that they had posted the message in with a gun in their backpack. Now, to this day, I do not know if that was relating to the information that we had given, but I like to think that it might be. But as I mentioned at the start, um, I am part of the OLSEN team for the Many Hats Club, and we took part in the Trace Labs CTF last week. And that is one thing that I've been loving doing the past while. I was originally selected for the team back in January of last year. However, due to family commitments, I was unable to participate. I've now gone on to win 3 times in a row, and this is actually where I learned about OSINT for good, and that is the likes of Badass Army and Innocent Lives Foundation, Trace Labs, all those organizations who use OSINT for the good of people instead of the bad. But as I did promise at the start of the talk, I will be talking about how to get into OSINT, how I got into OSINT. So one of I basically class him as a mentor, Cyber Viking. I stupidly asked for him to uh, have a little bit of fun, right? So this was a picture that me, Cyber Viking, and a couple of other people took. That's me circled red, and that is at Trinity Bar in Dublin, which we took with a webcam that is publicly available. And there's me then walking later down by the GPO in O'Connell Street. Right. Now, this went on for a couple of weeks. He was trying to figure out where I lived. Right. Here, he's then tracking me going through Blanchardstown. Now, I love this one, right? This picture is captioned, "He still doesn't know." I knew because he fell over a stand like a minute before taking this photo. So yeah, I knew he was following me then, and I was actually leading him down some interesting aisles. And ultimately, he then got the bus route that I was on, and he managed to get a good idea as to where I lived. Uh, so what can be done to remedy this? Well, I would say you could have good OPSEC, but sure, it doesn't matter how good your OPSEC is. There's always going to be other people taking photos. Um, so Cyber Viking will actually be talking a bit more about that side in his talk on the Red Track tonight. So, lastly, OSINT for beginners. Where would I suggest starting off? Well, there's 3 main parts that I like to talk about OSINT for beginners. That's Google Dorking, Enumeration, and GeoInt or IMINT. GeoInt is geophysical intelligence, and IMINT is image intelligence. Right, so first of all, let's talk about Google Dorking. It's easy, and if used right, it can be very, very powerful. So I gave my information at the start because what's the best person to use for examples other than yourself? Because you can give yourself consent. And if you use in title AlanTheBlank, you'll find my name, you'll find that I'm Irish by my YouTube channel, and you'll find my college very fast. So that's why I gave that information at the start, as opposed to self-doxing myself. And this is powerful when doing a wind down from the Tracelabs CTF, which we've done past few times. We've had people come onto the server for a little wind down, just chat strategies. We always mention, well, did you try Google dorking that? They always say no, but you can actually pivot off of a Google Dork to family through weird ways, but 9 times out of 10 it does work. And then you also have enumeration. Now, enumeration is getting more information, basically. It's handy. It could be automated. Now, there is this tool that I'd recommend for enumerating profiles under a certain username. That's called Sherlock. And what that does, it makes it into a lovely little handy list. So again, I use my own information here because it's easiest to get consent off of. Here you see all the list of profiles that I have. And again, you can access this. These are live. Please don't hack. No hacky. But yeah, you can get a lot of information off of doing enumeration. Because from this you can tell I like anime, I play chess, I at one point played Fortnite, that's a new one. Roblox false positive, which happens a lot, for Spotify. Yeah, you can tell a lot from a person's online presence. And again, this is something that people really, really don't think about. It can be the make all or break all of a search when it comes to trace labs. Because again, it's more profiles. It could be a weaker OPSEC based profile. You could have an address, you could have a phone number. That phone number could still be active. It could be doing pinging off stuff. You never know. And that is why you should always just find profiles. Run the likes of Sherlock, enumerate all the profiles that you can, then manually check them to see if they are actually belonging to the people. And lastly, GeoInt. So when searching this, it was hard to find a good example. And I kind of made my own example here at the end through the help of people on Twitter. So the CIA basically summarized GeoInt as, where am I? What are natural and man-made? And what does this place look like now via after an event? They were not specific about event, so I am worried what that means. And what's the talk without a little bit of a example? So one more for the road. Let's do one last example. And Twitter is a great place for these examples, right? If you search hashtag OLSEN, 9 times out of 10 you're going to get someone posting an OLSEN challenge. And this was a interesting one. This had been the first one I had done in a while, so I was a little bit rusty going into it. And really, I had thought this might be London, but I don't know London at all. So I had to do a little bit of work, and eventually GeoInt comes into it in the end, right? So going through his Twitter to try and find information, we find this. A lovely sight while walking to work at, well, I've redacted it, but it's up there. So we get information from this, right? He's walking to work and he's crossing what turns out to be the Tower Bridge in London. First of all, I should probably verify that. Here I am at a place. I'm trying to figure out what way it is because, again, I don't know London. And he turns out is going northbound to London, up London. So going back to our original photo, we need to pick out key points here to help search. So we clearly have a restaurant. It's an interesting corner building, and there's huge balconies, right? From the style of building, from the light on the buildings, even we can tell that it's uh, later in the day by the shadows. We can see the building further in the back is lit up as opposed to the building in the foreground. So the sun's not above. So it is an afternoon picture, which means we're heading southbound. Now, just searching about until we find a building that matches it. We end up going to Duchess Walk. I find a restaurant called By Chloe, which might be that restaurant that we see there. And we can kind of make out the sharp corner that we have in the right of the image here. We have the balconies that are prominent on our left. And of course, the best way to find out is to go online and verify. So we jumped down in Google Maps, and that was the exact location as to where that picture was taken. So to summarize on that, if you're looking to get into OSINT, the best way to do it is through these Twitter challenges. You build up a collection of methodologies. You build up a collection of tools. You learn some tools work better than other tools. You also learn how to do a bit of GeoInt and ImInt. But for further resources, I would recommend these 3 links for resources. So the first one is relating to Google Dorking. The second one is a fantastic course by Robert Folker. He actually has 3 intelligence analyst certifications. I've done the first one myself, but unfortunately, since the time of me doing it and this talk happening, he hasn't put on a cost. I think it's $20 for the course, but it's a great course. There are 3 of them altogether, though, and there's another course that I would highly recommend. It's the bestseller according to Udemy by Dean O, and it is a OSINT course from beginner to advanced. I reached out to him, and he thankfully gave a coupon code, as you can see in the link there, which will be available on request, or I'll leave it up for a few more seconds for someone to screenshot it. And that coupon code will bring it down to $35 instead of the $50. So before I go into questions, which if people do have questions, do leave them in the Twitch chat. Yeah, to get into OSINT, really just practice, practice, practice. You can't do more than practice. And so I lost my train of thought there. Yeah,
You're doing good,
so
dude. You're doing great.
thanks. Yeah. So, is there any questions?
So, I've got a quick question for you.
Go on.
When we did Bacon 1, we had Viking and Rag on doing a talk about OSINT.
Yeah.
And I asked the question to them, and I'm going to ask it to you, which was, a lot of people see OSINT as possibly incredibly invasive, and it's about nicking things from cameras and all that kind of stuff. What are the positive applications of it in your head, Alan? How can we turn this idea that things are invasive and intrusive into something good?
So we do have the OSINT for Good initiative, where we do see the likes of Instant Lives Foundation and Badass Army who help take down revenge porn, and we also have the likes of Trace Labs who use this OSINT, the information given by people online, readily available for anyone to look up, and they do use that information for good.
Yeah.
I don't know if that really answers your question.
I think it does. I think a lot of people see a CCTV camera and assume, oh, the man is watching me and all that kind of stuff. But I heard a tale about somebody preventing a suicide, actually, because they were able to watch an individual sat on a bridge that was presumably contemplating killing themselves and managed to prevent it happening, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah, I heard of that one actually. But like CCTV cameras generally tend to be open, so we'll go back. Where is it? Just hold on for a second. Yeah, CCTV cameras tend to be open, and it leads to brilliant shots like this, where we got a group photo down the busy street of Temple Bar, and we were just standing there for like a minute waiting for the camera to catch up. And yeah, it's one of the funnier pictures to show people. And as I said, CCTV cameras tend to be open, and I think that's more of a case for the sake of other people, kind of crowdsourcing security.
Yeah. Going to try and get through a few questions here. So, what are your best resources for learning OSINT? I think you put a few links in there anyway.
Yeah, and there's another one that I didn't put in, but that'd be sourcing.games. And that is one of the better ones that I have been told. So it's basically a simulated OSINT environment. You'll be given the headers of dodgy emails and told to find out where this came from. It's a really great simulation of doing OSINT. Or you'll be given dummy GitHub accounts and told to get the email used to register for this Git account.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I guess Matt LeBraid came up with a secondary question, which was around tooling. Is it Google Dorking? Is it Shodan? Is it finding cameras that are online that you can easily get access to? I mean, what works for you?
Well, Shodan's pretty interesting when you use it, because you can filter specifically for webcams, and if you're trying to find webcams, Shodan would be the easier way to do it. But so you can find a ton of them in Ireland, but if you're using Shodan for these, you really only find churches, where most of Dublin is actually openly available. But churches, and I think I've seen like a farm or two, which doesn't help the stereotype, but that's what I've been seeing.
But you do live in a fairly gentle country, which is mostly country, to be fair.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised that my Zoom's so smooth, because I'm actually in a rural part of the country right now. So I'm actually surprised I have smooth connection.
So let's see about a couple more questions. Let's see what we've got. Right. Oh, here's one. I like this one. Is Maltego worth doing?
Personally, no.
Okay, explain.
It's great for large investigations. If you're in a 3-letter organization, it'd be absolutely great. But I reckon they'd have an in-house version of Maltego. Unless you're doing a large investigation which spans off into about 10 people, I would not recommend it. Just adds to make it overcomplicated. But it could. People's mileage varies. People may find it better to visualize the data, but I've used it before and I was not a huge fan of it.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Right, we are done, Alan. So thank you very much for that.
No problem. Thank you for having me on.
No, absolutely perfect. Brilliant, mate. If we didn't get all your questions, I do apologise. Hopefully, Alan maybe get on the Twitch and answer a few directly.
Yeah.
We're going to gap off now for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to have Sulphur up, and Stu will introduce Sulphur. So thank you very much. Cheers, Alan.
Thank you.